Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Cosmic Circus review. My name is Vin. With me today,
Hey
special
guys,
guest star Drew.
it is me. It's Drew.
Drew has been with us since the beginning. He's one of the OGs, and this is his YouTube debut. But he's all over our audio stuff. So if you go listen to our podcast, if you go check out our website, there's lots of articles by Drew. And I'm so proud of Drew. He's like my comics protege. Drew started with zero on the comic scale, and now I think he could teach me things. So I'm so proud of where he's come with his comic stuff, and look for more comic articles from Drew in the future.
Yep,
Anyways,
working on it.
today we're not talking about comics. We're talking about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, support us on Patreon. Just a few dollars a month help support the channel, help support the work we're doing here, and you'll receive exclusive access to our Discord server, mailbag access to ask us questions, and early access to super cool cosmic content. All right. So this show was written and showrun by Ira Parker, starring Peter Claffey as Sir Dunk the Tall, Dexter Saul Ansell as Prince Aegon Egg Targaryen, and it's based on the Hedge novella by George R. Martin. Of course, we're going to spoil the whole season. I already just spoiled some stuff. Oops.
That's
Run
okay.
away if you don't want spoilers.
Yeah, that's pretty much like the most baseline spoiler I'd say of the show. So you're all
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but Egg being a Targaryen, I clocked that from the first episode. I didn't know anything, but I was like, that kid,
Yeah,
Targaryen. That's why he shaved his head to hide that he's okay. So before we get into the show, I want to ask you, Drew. I'll give you the stage now. What is your history with Game of Thrones?
I mean, I've been watching Game of Thrones for years, man. I mean, I think I started Game of Thrones about when it was like airing on TV, probably around season 5. So I would say like 2015, about a little over 10 years now. So yeah, I've been watching since it was on TV at season 5. So I've
Mm-hmm.
seen 5, 6, 7, 8 on
Mm-hmm.
of Game of Thrones, and then first 2 seasons of House of the Dragon. And I mean, I'm pretty much up to speed on everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty invested in the Thrones. Ice and Fire world is pretty much my favorite kind of television world. I would say it's not my favorite fantasy world. Lord of the Rings, Tolkien is my favorite fantasy world, but Thrones is probably my favorite television world to immerse myself in.
No
So yeah,
kidding.
I'm pretty adept in
Yeah,
the
and
world.
you read the books too, right?
So I've read the Duncan Egg novellas. I have not read the Song of Ice and Fire books just because it's so different. Like I don't want to like taint my view of the show, even though like
Okay.
obviously the last season is not great, but I don't want to
Uh-huh.
kind of like I would prefer not to read the books. I probably won't. I have read Fire and Blood as well, so I'm pretty up to speed
Sure.
on everything House of the Dragon related. So
Okay. And let's just say, just in general, how do you feel about how they've handled the adaptations? Just thumbs up, thumbs down
of this
overall. What do
show,
you think? No, no,
of
everything. Just
everything.
holistically. Yeah.
So this show was, excuse me, this show was like nearly perfect adaptation. I would say a near perfect adaptation. House of the Dragon faltered in the second season.
Okay.
There seems to be a disagreement with the showrunner and George R. R. Martin. George R. R. Martin's pretty particular about his material.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch any interviews, he's pretty particular about adaptations. He wants everything to be kind of by the book. Doesn't really want any kind of variation. I think mostly because he feels like the end of Game of Thrones was a big variation
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
the book. So I think
Yeah.
he's a little bit nervous about steering away from the canon. So yeah, House of the Dragon faltered a little bit in the second season, as many will agree. I think the writer's strike kind of messed up the second season for them, but I think they'll get back on track in the third season. Thrones was good up until the last season. I think most people would agree that with that. So, but I would say in terms of being faithful to the books, I think Duncan Egg was really the most faithful adaptation, not just in the Thrones universe, but it's really like nearly one of
Mhm.
one, except for a couple of little things.
That's amazing. That's great to hear. I guess I'm a pretty casual Game of Thrones fans, even by Game of Thrones standards.
Yeah.
Because most casual fans, I'd say, have kind of gone. A lot of from my friends have gone through the books. Um, I started when season 5 was just about to come out. That
Hmm.
summer, that was like peak hype, right? And that summer, I binged 1, 2, 3, and 4. Um, I would say I was doing 2 seasons a week, 2 or 3 seasons a week. I was a machine, and I was
Yeah.
taking classes that summer. I was like God mode. I don't know how I did it. Anyway,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
was
if you love
obsessed.
it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I adore seasons 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 hit me just. it did not work for me. And 6, 7, 8, I just never got back on the horse. So when House of
Yeah.
the Dragon started, I was like, I'm not even messing with this. I'm done. A Game of Thrones, it's over. We're over. And when the
Yeah.
show came out, I was not going to give it a chance. I was like, I don't care anymore. But everyone told me it's good. And they told
Oh,
me,
then yeah.
dude, it's 6 episodes, it's 30 minutes, it's a comedy. And I just tried it only because it's 30 minutes. Drew, I love the show. I'm
Yeah,
obsessed with
it's
the show.
it's
I'm telling everybody to watch the show. This show is amazing. Go on.
no, I mean I totally agree. I think first episode I was the first episode is obviously slow. If you're new to this universe, this show is really for people who love the universe, love being in the world, love seeing all the if because Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon is so big, sometimes you lose kind of the humanity of it all. I would say you lose being able to be invested really in the characters and the dialogue, and everything just feels like like a big war for the throne. And I think this show is so different, where there's no stakes. I mean, obviously there are stakes too. You see that happens later in the season, but it's really just about a hedge knight and a young boy, and just the story that builds off of that, and it exists in a world. The world is kind of the backdrop for the story, where a lot of the times it feels like the complete opposite. So I think that's really attractive to people who really love Game of Thrones and the world of
Mm-hmm.
Game of Thrones. For the general audience, it's going to be a little bit harder to get invested early on because of how
Mm-hmm.
slow it is and just how much of a slow burn it is for the first. But I mean, it's only 30 minutes, so it's not like
If you
you're
compare
not
this to Game of
spending.
Thrones season one, I think that is much slower, probably.
Oh, Game of Thrones season one is real tough to get through if you're
Yeah,
like if you wanted to get invested. That's a real tough one because the budget
yeah.
was so low on that too. It almost feels like a an earlier version of Night of the Seven Kingdoms season one, just kind of aesthetically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, once you get to like episode three in this, I think
Yeah.
most of the
It's
general
cooking.
audience that
Yeah.
most yeah, once you get to episode three, like you're like, damn, they're cooking here. Like this is something serious, and I think that's when I saw most of the general audience kind of get on the hype train, and then
Mm-hmm.
episode four came, and it was awesome, and then episode
Yeah.
five came, and that was the big kind of
Hell
big
yeah.
moment of the
Yeah.
season, and everybody loved that. So I think that was really when the kind of series caught fire, and I really liked the first two episodes though. I really liked just being able
Mhm.
to spend time in the world and just see what like the day to day is kind of because you don't really get a lot of time to do that when in other shows that have so many moving pieces that are just you know constantly involved in a giant story. So
Yeah. And I think something like what did you see Sinners last year?
I've not seen Sinners yet.
Okay.
That is my biggest
But
like.
Sinners does something kind of like this where like it goes slow at the beginning. It just shows you the characters living their day-to-day lives and then the crazy stuff happens later. But
Mhm.
first, it starts a little bit slow just to set the stakes, just to introduce the characters.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's what those first two episodes are for. Let's just get to know how is this different from Game of Thrones. Let's just get a feel for the world. Okay, it's kind of funny. It's kind of light. Okay, that's cute. And then 3, 4, 5, you get the stakes. You get the battles. People die. Again, I don't want to spoil
yeah.
too much,
No, yeah.
but it becomes pretty like we're in Game of Thrones territory by the end of season 5. They play the theme. And then episode 6, we come back to okay, let's reset the story now and get ready for season 2. So I thought it was great. How would you pitch this to someone if they don't have any interest in Game of Thrones? How could you get someone? Because I think this is accessible. If you're new to
It
the
is
universe, I
very
think it is.
accessible.
What is the elevator pitch?
Yeah, the elevator pitch. y- So that's the thing. It's hard. People really like. It depends on what kind of watcher you are, what kind of
Yeah.
audience member you are. Do you like characters that are really dense, that have a lot of depth to them, and because you really do get a lot of that with Dunk. Dunk is kind of like kind of feels like kind of a silly, kind of dopey character, but
Yep.
they really do give him a lot of backstory where you really get to the nitty gritty of who he is and who he becomes because of Sir Arlen. So I would say to people, if you really like characters that really get to be fleshed out and like Dunk has a really great character arc over the season, and I think if you like a character like a hero, it's just a true hero's tale.
Mhm.
So if you like something like that, where it's like a huge like a knight's tale, like it's a real hero's tale. If you like something like that, I would say to get invested. Obviously, there's not a ton of action in it, but I
But
feel like
they have
the
it. They do have the
no,
action
they
that they
do,
need.
yeah, yeah. I just feel like the depth to the characters makes up for the lack of action because if the characters aren't interesting, people are just there for the action. And while this does lack action, obviously the characters are great. And this is some of the best character work that Game of Thrones has done.
And Game of Thrones had really good character work,
Oh
right?
yeah, I mean, yeah, you got like Varys, and
Yeah.
there's just so many characters I could name, but
But this show
gosh,
contains some of the best writing from all of Game of Thrones already,
yeah,
which is incredible.
absolutely.
And I think what makes it work is it's such a small story. Like basically, this whole season is just one tiny little story. You can tell it's from a novella. It's just a tight story, but it has major ramifications, major action. It never loses its character focus. It stays totally focused on this dopey little hedge knight and his little friend, and that's it. But it has this huge story, huge action, huge stakes. But it's this tight focused story. I think
Yeah.
that's what's amazing. And the casting is so perfect. Like if I'm reading the
Oh,
book, I'm going to
it's
be
so great.
imagining like
Yeah.
I don't understand how they could. I don't even know how there's a book that came first. This has to be the original because it's just so well done.
Yeah, so for example, I read the second book, the Sworn Sword. I read
Mhm.
that actually like about a week ago,
Yeah,
or a little over a week ago. I read it in 2 days,
yeah,
maybe like less than 2 days.
yeah.
And the whole time I was reading it in Duncan Egg's voice, and it's just like it just fits so well, man. It's just so good, and that those roles are cast so well. I think Peter Claffey as Dunk is like is just top tier casting. And even what's the child's name? Dexter Soul
Dexter.
Ansell.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, he's so good as Eggman. Such a great child actor, and obviously the guy who plays Baylor, Bertie Carvel, is
Yeah,
is so
yeah.
good as Baylor. Man, he's got such a recognizable voice. I think in the trailer, they one of the catchphrases or the stingers at the end of the
Tagline.
trailer.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the taglines is "So, Sir Duncan, how good of a knight are you?" And I think that's such a memorable line because of how distinguishable his voice is and how much that like it just kind of stays in your head. And he's such a good actor. So I think those three were really
Hmm.
well cast.
And he also Dunk has his younger friend, the one who gets a wife at the end.
Yeah, Raymond.
That
Yeah, Sir
that
Raymond.
Raymond, perfect side character, amazing side character.
Yeah,
He doesn't really do much the whole season.
I was
Every
about to
time
say
he's
that.
on
Yeah.
screen, I adore that character.
Yeah, I
Just
was
a
about to say
great.
he really doesn't do a lot. Actually, he really only comes on in like the third episode. He comes on in the third episode is when he really comes on. You see him in the first episode briefly, and they meet each other, but he really comes on in the third episode, and he's there from 3 to 6, and he just quickly becomes a character that everybody loves, and it goes to show how quickly they can establish a character, how quickly they can develop him and make him one of the most loved like characters on the show. I
Yeah,
mean, he's awesome. Like what a great side character. Him and Lionel Baratheon too. I mean,
yeah. Oh
those are
yeah, yeah,
two those are two
yeah.
characters who really didn't do much in the books actually
Yeah.
because
But
in the
they
book
just
they're
the
just
power
doing
of the casting and the costumes and the hair and everything. Like, and that's one of
yeah
the strengths that original Game of Thrones had as well, is that they can take these little side characters, like just little nobodies from the corner, and
yeah
over like a season, they develop them into like a major character. Like, for some reason, I'm thinking of like Podrick. You remember him, or like
oh of
his
course I
relationship with
remember
Brienne?
Podrick,
Like,
yeah.
where did he come from? If you're tracking the show, you're just like he's a nobody, and suddenly like I'll die for him.
Oh yeah,
Like
I mean Podrick was like the original Raymond. I think that's like where like
yeah,
the big inspiration of it came from. Was Podrick was just kind of this like little, like he was the squire for Tyrion, and then he just becomes his own character, and he
yeah.
becomes like this legend kind of. And I think that's the same thing with Raymond. So I'm not gonna give too much
To
away.
be honest, even Tyrion. If you look at season 1 versus season 8, Tyrion, he has such a crazy evolution, and that's one of the greatest things about this universe. And
Yeah.
Knight of the Seven Kingdoms taps into that completely. The power to create like these tiny characters, to evolve them, to develop them, to
Mhm.
surprise you with them, and they're so memorable just from the casting and the costumes and the writing and the acting,
Yeah,
of
there
course.
there there's still so many characters from Game of Thrones that just have such memorable quotes that you can just ring off the top of your head, like Tormund and Peter Baelish and Varys. I mean, gosh, Varys has so many quotable. Lord Varys has so many quotable like lines, and I think it's just a testament to the writing, and the same thing with this show. Like I just mentioned, with a lot of Baelor's lines are so memorable. Like
Mhm.
obviously we're doing full spoilers. We're good to
Go
do.
ahead. Go ahead.
We're good to
Yeah.
do full like when he rides out to be on Duncan's team, and he says, I will take Sir Duncan's side." I think that's such a, it's just one line, but it's so memorable. I think so
Yeah.
many people have, I've seen so many tweets about it,
Oh
and
yeah.
such a
Yes.
memorable line. And then when he's, when he's about to die, and he's like, and Dunk gets on one knee, and he's like, "I'm your man." He's like, "Please, I'm your man." He's like, "I need good men. The realm needs good men." And it's just so good, such good writing, I think. And it really is a mix of good writing and good acting that really combines to make like the perfect character.
Yeah, I'd say it has like all the same highs that like early Game of Thrones had. Before it was taken over with dragons and White Walkers and all that. Just like character drama, battles, honor, betrayal, all
Yeah,
of that.
that's really
It's
the
just
big
yeah.
theme, is honor and doing the right thing. And I think that is the kind of theme that strays away from Game of Thrones a lot of the time,
Mhm.
especially in the early seasons, because a lot of the early seasons of Game of Thrones was really the Game of Thrones. It's about who can scheme the best, who is the most sneaky, and who can weasel their way into the best situations. And I think this is a different story. This is about doing the right thing, and I think that's lost a lot of the time in media, because I would say for a lot of years, 40, 50 years ago, a lot of stories were about doing the right thing, and they were kind of the cliche hero versus villain story. And I think a lot of stories have tried to um, give the writing a little more nuance than that, not just a kind of black and white, do the right thing kind of story. And this is really that. This is the first time in a while where I've seen a story that's really just about a guy who, with the right morals, with the right head on his shoulders, that just wants to do the right thing. And he spends the entire season doing that. And obviously it almost gets him killed, sort of like Ned Stark. But this is a scenario where this guy luckily survived, because doing the right thing gave you allies, gave you good allies. That helped you. Even a Targaryen prince like Baelor. So
Not to deviate too much, but it's almost like James Gunn's pitch for Superman was like a guy who's trying to do the right thing in a corrupt world, right?
yeah,
But
that's exactly what it is.
here
Yeah,
it's even better, I think, because he's not Superman. He doesn't have all these superpowers. He's not super smart either,
no,
but he
not at
has a
all.
good
Yeah,
heart. He has a good heart, and that's enough to like you care for him. And then
yeah,
Egg, and just the combination. It's such a well done show. It took me totally by surprise. I've been recommending it to everybody, and
yeah.
I'm so happy with where it is. And
So,
it's cool to be excited about Game of Thrones again.
oh yeah, that's the best feeling, I would say, is having a show where everybody is kind of excited week to week about this show. That's
Yeah.
really refreshing, because it's been so long. I mean, the end of Game of Thrones kind of really tainted the fandom.
Mm,
People, there was a lot of discourse and a lot of division over the series, especially about House of the Dragon too. A lot of people were kind of iffy on the second season, and
mm.
it's nice to have a show where everybody just really loves it and is able to kind of appreciate it, appreciate what it's doing. And I think it's kind of reminding people to, do the right thing and lead with kind of honor and stuff like that. And but yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Would you say you have any negatives, any criticisms of the show, especially like considering the
The
books?
only negative
Mhm.
is that the very last scene of the season, remember, where Makar is like, "Where is he?"
Mhm.
That's not a thing from the book. Makar in the book is, he lets Aegon go. He gives he there's something very specific in the second book that they're gonna have to change something in the second book that I'm not
I saw
of.
someone saying it's possible that he's faking it. It's a public appearance that he's pretending like he let that A got away and he didn't
Yeah,
let him go, but I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I think that
Yeah.
they're gonna do something early in the season, next season, where
Okay.
maybe they catch up to them, and maybe they have a discussion. But that doesn't happen in the books.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about what they're gonna do with that. But it definitely
If
did.
they start deviating from the books, do you have faith in the writing team that they can do a good job, or does that make you nervous?
Yeah. No, no, I don't think they're going to deviate, actually, because the showrunner Ira Parker pretty much came out and was like, "We're doing a
Hmm.
pretty faithful adaptation to the Sworn Sword, which is going to be season two. And it is going to be very different. That's the one thing I was going to get to is these are anthology books, pretty much,
Oh,
where
really?
with
Okay.
the with the same character. I mean, I guess that's, would you call it anthology, where it's the same characters in different settings
Yeah.
with completely new
Yeah.
characters and new.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
it,
Yeah.
it 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 is an anthology series. So next season you're gonna have a clean slate of characters. You're gonna have
Yeah.
Dunk and Egg, but with a completely new set of characters and a new area of Westeros with a new conflict. So
Oh,
you're not
interesting.
really gonna have a ton of threads continued, unfortunately, for people that really love characters like Raymond and Lionel. And And some of the Targaryens, you're not going to have Lionel back next season. You're not going to have Raymond back next season. This is really just about Dunk and Egg and the evolution of Dunk and Egg and and the way that they grow as characters and their relationship. And so I think that's the one thing I'm a little worried about for people is how they're going to respond to season 2 and how much of a difference it is, because this is not Game of Thrones and House of Dragon where you're going to the second season on a continuation of the first season.
Mhm.
I think that they're trying to keep a little bit of a thread, and I think that's where the
Okay.
last season comes from.
Okay.
It actually didn't shock me when that happened. I was like, oh, this is what they're doing to keep a little bit of a thread going throughout the show, because they don't want to just do a completely standalone seasons. I think that they do want to keep a little bit of a thread throughout each season,
Continuation.
especially when you get into season 3. The third book kind of does play with a little bit of threads from the first season, and it actually is very interesting. I'm not going to spoil anything,
Yeah.
obviously,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I can see kind of how they're keeping a little thread alive from the first season to
Mhm.
the third season, and I think they'll go beyond the third season. Actually, I think
Yeah.
that the showrunner said that that George R. R. Martin gave them 10 to 12 other
Mhm. I
novellas
think I heard
worth.
13, but you know better
Yeah,
probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a novella's worth of stories, and there certainly is. I mean, if you go into the Song of Ice and Fire Wikipedia page, you go on the page for Duncan and Aegon, and look, this isn't a spoiler. Aegon is Aegon the Fifth. He's the fifth Aegon king. He's going to be king someday, and I mean, I'm sure everybody knows that. I mean, they pretty much foreshadow it. They had
They do.
the
Yeah.
fortune teller
Yeah.
said you'll be king someday,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, anybody that kind of knows a little bit of Game of Thrones history knows that this is Aegon the Fifth. He's the
Wow.
fifth Aegon.
That's pretty cool.
Before Jon Snow is Aegon the Sixth. That he is Aegon the Fifth, and he will be king. So
Wow.
I think there is a lot of story to tell. There is a lot of story. There's more. Listen, they spoke a lot about the Blackfire Rebellion this season. There's 4 Blackfire rebellions.
Okay.
So there are multiple Blackfire rebellions still to happen that they can
Wow.
get involved with in this show. And there's a lot of history still left to tell between, Aegon's only a kid and he's
Mhm.
still got a lot of years left till when he becomes a king. So there's still a lot of story to tell and still a lot of story to flesh out for, Duncan as well. So
This is so fascinating for me because like I just watch this as like pure fantasy. I don't really track the history and everything. Like that's all over my head. But
yeah.
now that you're piecing it together like this, I'm starting to see like a timeline. And now I can see it's something like Star Wars, and I see the
Yeah.
generations and how they start to evolve and inform each other. That's really cool.
Yes, I can tell you, if there's a scene in the first season of Game of Thrones, I probably should have showed you this before we went on this podcast or this video, but there's a scene in the first season of Game of Thrones with Aemon, Maester Aemon at Castle Black when he's talking to Jon about after Ned is killed.
Hmm.
John wants to leave and go fight with Robb. Maester Aemon knows this. He comes up and talks to him, and he talks about how he is the son of Maekar. Maester Aemon is. Did you know that Maester Aemon was the son of Maekar? He's Aegon's brother.
No, this is all way beyond me. But
Yeah.
this is
So
great. I'm taking notes. Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of blow your mind here a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, Maester Aemon is one of the 5 sons of Maekar from Night of the Seven Kingdoms. He's Aegon's brother.
Whoa.
Aegon's son is the Mad King,
Okay.
and the Mad King's daughter is Daenerys, and his son is Rhaegar.
So it's
So
really starting to connect like this now.
oh, it is. It's
Oh
a total
wow.
connection. I mean, this is real. This is real prequel to Game of Thrones stuff we're
Wow.
getting to.
Because it's
So
amazing because it's just so it works so well by itself that we never had this discussion, I would
Mhm.
still love it. But now that we
Yeah,
have this
and
discussion, it just adds so much more depth to it for me.
yeah, and the thing is, this isn't even really a spoiler because it's this is such a crucial part of Game of Thrones too. Is the lineage,
Hmm.
Daenerys's lineage and Jon's lineage, and Maester Aemon kind of teaches him a lot about that in the first season about the Targaryen lineage. Jon actually knows the lineage. He goes, "Oh wow, you're Aemon Targaryen. You're the son of Maekar and Aegon's brother. So, and he talks about how." He's like my brothers they killed my brother's son and his children, the little children. He's talking about the Mad King, and he's talking about Rhaegar and his sons, and he tells John that, and that's such a cool connection between this show and Game of Thrones is Aemond, who is Aegon's brother, talking to John, who is Aegon's grandson, great grandson, yeah, great grandson. I know there's a whole lot
It's
of
good. It's good. So I want to ask,
yeah.
what can the other Game of Thrones spin-offs learn from this? So, for example, House of the Dragon, maybe, or any future spin-off ideas they have in the future. What lessons can we
Um,
take from Night of the Seven Kingdoms?
add a little humor.
Hmm.
Add a little bit of humor into the show. Funny characters will get you far.
Mhm.
Game of Thrones did so well because it had funny characters. It
Yes,
had
it was so
characters like,
lovable. Yeah.
yeah, it had humorous characters and characters with heart. And people like gray area characters, but House of the Dragon is all gray area characters. None of the characters have any kind of humor to them or anything like that. And I think that's where you lose a lot of people. Game of Thrones has characters with heart, with like Tyrion. Braun
Mhm.
was really funny. You have Tormund, who's hilarious. I mean, even characters like the Hound, the Hound is unintentionally funny. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's so miserable that he's funny. You just have
Yeah.
characters that they just find a way to make them funny, even if they're not intentionally funny. And I think that's something that can be learned from in any kind of show. Is None of the Kingdoms does so well because it really does. It strikes such a great balance between humor and seriousness.
Mhm.
And it doesn't really meddle with each other either. I haven't noticed any scenes where it's a serious scene and then they do something funny. The only scene that like kind of bothered me a little bit was when Duncan was like asking for another night to like the people in the stands. Remember that?
Yeah.
The guy stands up and then he just farts, and I'm just like, I don't know about that.
I think it's more disrespect than funny, and it
Yeah,
lands either way, right?
yeah, I
It's
know. It's
funny
just
and
that
it
one.
hurts. Yeah.
That one was just like, I don't
Yeah.
know. That
But
was the
I
moment
guess
where I was hoping.
what you have is a good point because the show starts with him pooping. That's not in the
Yeah,
book,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
think it's to immediately show, look, we're we're bringing something different now. Like we're bringing back a weird sense of
absolutely.
humor. Maybe it'll land, maybe it won't. But this is different from what you've seen in House of the Dragon, right? Where I don't know if that was intentional or not, but to me it feels like it was like kind of like
Oh,
a statement at the beginning, like, look,
it
this is
was.
not. Yeah, go on.
It was no. It was definitely a huge statement, a huge like a distinguishable moment between this and House of the Dragon. Like, hey, this is we're doing something different here, and it's gonna
Yeah.
be we're gonna try something that's pretty out there. And you know what? It landed. House of the Dragon plays it safe a little bit, and I think maybe that's not the worst thing for a show that's coming off of having a really controversial ending. But I think now that they had a show that played it safe, they can really take a risk with this show, and it's really panning out. I think they have a really great foundation to work off of, especially for the upcoming books as well. I think the characters are really well established, and you're going to meet some really good, it's going to be tough. I'm going to see how they kind of flesh out some new characters because characters like Raymond and Lionel, I really do not expect them to flesh them out like this, and and
It
and people
also
really love
makes
them.
me really optimistic because in the future maybe they can do this for other side characters, and every season maybe we'll just get more and more brand new side characters that we
Yeah,
love,
you will. Yeah,
right? Because
you
I'm sure
will.
there's a lot of potential instead of just they created these characters and we stick with them, but if we keep getting fresh characters each
Mhm.
season will be so rich, right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I can see beyond. So there's only three novellas,
Hmm.
and so they have a great, three novella foundation to build off of. I would not be shocked if beyond that you start to see a little bit more connective tissue
Yeah.
in the series, where you start to maybe bring some of these characters together in other ways, maybe that we just haven't seen yet. Like
And
they're
then it
for
all builds into a big end game moment when all the side characters come back.
Yeah, I don't know if there's really like I don't know if there's a big end game, like a big portals moment like that where you have all the people come out together, but I do think that there could be some more connective tissue with some
Yeah.
characters. I think for instance, Lionel, I think does have some connective tissue in the future to Dunk. I'm not gonna spoil anything, obviously, because they will probably get to it, but there are some future stories to tell with Lionel and Dunk and their friendship, and I think Lionel probably will be back.
Mhm.
Maybe not in season 2 or season 3, but I think he'll be back beyond that. But I think they're going to spend these next 2 seasons really developing other side characters. Hopefully, that people love. I think that they probably will.
Are there anything we can? Is there anything else we can learn about like doing a book adaptation? Are you saying like should we always follow like line by line? Because I know this is almost line by
No,
line
I
from
don't,
the
I don't
book,
think
right?
that you need to do
Okay.
line by line, but I think that there are certain aspects of books where you need to kind of hit those moments that are those highs. I think you need to be able to identify from a book what are the highs of this book, what needs to be in this show, dialogue wise and scene wise. And I think there are obviously some things that you don't need to hit beat by beat, but sometimes dialogue is just that good where you just have to put it in the show. I mean, there's this
Especially if
one
it's
line.
iconic, if it's memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this one line in Night of the Seven Kingdoms that Dunk keeps saying to Egg. He's like, Dunk or Egg does something bad. He's like, I'll give you a clout in the ear. clout in the ear, and that's such a common thread in the book. He always says that whenever Egg does something like bad. So that's like a one little one little kind of niche thing that I like that they kept, and I think they've done a really good job of keeping the personas of both the characters. I don't think you need to follow beat by beat though, not line by line, and they certainly haven't. They've fleshed out a lot of different characters, and not everything is line by line, but there are certainly some moments that are line by line. Like for instance, in episode 6, the funeral scene,
Mhm.
when he's talking to Baelor's son Valar, that's pretty line by line. That's pretty much you know, like translated pretty much one to one. So, but there are other scenes like the scene with Raymond and his wife that's not in the book. Nobody sees that. They don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they do a good job of switching back and forth, getting to the iconic moments, and then making their own moments. And I hope that they do more of that, especially for season 2.
Mhm.
Season 2 is a little slow to begin with, or the second book is a little slow to begin with. They're going to have to get a little creative, and I think that they kind of
Yeah.
have teased that a
With
little
the
bit.
end of
That they
season 6, episode 6. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they've created a thread for early on in season 2, because early on in season 2 is a little slow. For me, it was a little bit similar to season 1, where it really picks up. It gets to the meat of the story in the middle, and it kind of goes from there, rides out until the end. But I could see those first 2 episodes being a little slow, and people being like, "Oh, this might not be as good as season 1." So hopefully, they'll come up with something creative for season 2. But in terms of book adaptations, I think for season 2 they'll probably continue. Maybe being close to one, but not exactly. But I don't think every story has to be like that. Like I
Yeah.
said, if you can get to the meat of the story, and take the really iconic moments,
Mhm.
and then you can kind of formulate around that.
I remember with Game of Thrones, I did read the first book, and I felt it was almost one to one, pretty similar to the first season.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I know, of course, they start deviating. But it is pretty cool when you can watch something or read something and you can see the similarities. Um, I think that's pretty nice. I wanted to ask, what about other franchise media like Star Wars, Marvel? What can they
Mhm.
learn from this? Like when they're developing their spin-offs and their TV shows, what lessons can they take from this?
I think that you've seen a little bit of that from Star Wars with Andor. I think Andor is something like Night of the Seven Kingdoms is where it's just so fresh and new, and something that you haven't really seen in the universe. And I think more universes need to do that. Marvel has taken a couple chances. They've done stuff like Wonder Man.
Which was fantastic,
Um, yeah,
fantastic.
that's what I'm saying. So I think if there's any lesson that can be learned is take chances, take risks, and try. I mean, obviously, don't quality over quantity is very important,
And I
and I
would
think
say
just
focusing on the getting the characters right is really important too.
yep,
Right?
yeah, exactly. Like even for Night of the Seven Kingdoms, it's only 6 episodes and they're 30 minutes long each. But I know that's been a big complaint, but that's been kind of enough to really get these characters done. And you don't need to do like a 20 episode
Mhm.
season of an hour.
Yeah.
You can make these kind of 8 episode shows where you really just focus on the characters and getting those characters right, and people will love them. It's like what they did with Andor. I know Andor was 12 episodes per season, but a lot of Andor was spent really developing the characters and getting the characters right. And I think that's the most important, thing that any universe can take. And the same thing with Wonder Man. Wonder Man was a real character study.
Mhm.
It wasn't like
That was also like 8 episodes, 30 minutes, something like that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, they're all 30 minutes long. And I think that really people would appreciate that more. I think James Gunn is probably going to try and do some of that in the DCU, and some of it's going to work, some of it isn't. I think Lanterns probably will end up being something like that, I imagine.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, they seem to be doing like some kind of true detective type of thing. I think they're going to try and do something like that. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think more universes should probably try and take chances like that. I think a balance of big event things and small little character focused stories are. I think that's a good way to go about things.
Well said, man. Well said. Anything else? Any other comments?
No, I mean, I pretty much only have good things to say about this series.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's anything negative. I think the battle scene was shot really well in episode 5. I
hmm
think
hmm
I obviously wish we could have seen a
when
little
the
bit.
camera gets inside the helmet,
Yeah,
oh my god, that was great. That was great.
yeah,
And then, but
yeah,
there was like, I mean, when it cuts to the flashback, that's a little weird. But then it comes back to the battle, and I don't know. Overall, I'm just like 9 out of 10.
yeah.
This was like
I think
as great as it could be. I think.
yeah, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 too. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty much up there at like a 9.5 ish, 9. I would
Yeah.
say. So yeah, that's probably my rating.
Okay. Last
Yeah,
question. Last question. Would you say
uh
the show is better than the book?
yeah, I would.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Mhm.
That's great. All right, man. Thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Check out our website for more articles from Drew. Check out our podcast. Drew's all over the place. And also, reach out to him for comic stuff because Drew is our comics guy.
I try.
I'm I'm Vin. You can find me on Blue Sky at Vin Writes Words.
And I'm Drew. You can find me on Twitter at DrewReed1099.
And be sure to follow thecosmiccircus.com on Blue Sky and at My Cosmic Circus, where you can find more reviews, articles, editorials, and opinions like the ones you just watched. Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
And special thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see even more videos and extended content, please subscribe at the link in the description.
Thank you.
We did it!
Yay.